Nice to meet you again. Hope you are in good health, long life, success, and happiness always. This time we are back to discussing a prophet who is highly respected by mankind, especially those who are Muslim. Well, this is the story. Have a good time watching.
Prophet Muhammad. Born in Mecca, 570, died in Medina, June 8, 632, was a prophet and the last apostle for Muslims. Muhammad started the spread of Islamic teachings to all mankind and left a single Islamic government. Muhammad both uphold the teachings of monotheism to unite Allah as brought by the previous prophets and apostles. Muhammad was born in 570 AD in Mecca. His father's name was Abdullah and his mother's name was Amina. Muhammad's father died when Muhammad was 6 months old in his mother's womb, and his mother died when Muhammad was 6 years old. After being orphaned, Muhammad was raised under the care of his grandfather Abdul Muttalib until he was 8 years old. Then Muhammad was raised by his uncle Abu Talib for almost 40 years. As a teenager, Muhammad worked as a trader. Muhammad sometimes retreated to the cave of a hill for many nights to contemplate and pray. It is narrated that at the age of 40, Muhammad was visited by the angel Gabriel and received his first revelation from Allah. 3 years after the first revelation, Muhammad began preaching openly, proclaiming the oneness of Allah in the form of surrendering himself through Islam as the true religion and abandoning gods besides Allah. Muhammad received revelations gradually until his death. Muhammad's practices are narrated in hadith, referred to by Muslims as the source of Islamic law alongside the Quran. Muhammad and his early followers encountered various forms of resistance and torture from some of the Meccan tribes. As the persecution continued, Muhammad allowed some of his followers to emigrate to Habsiyah, before Muhammad embarked on a migration mission to Medina in 622. The Hijra event marked the beginning of the Islamic Hijri calendar. In Medina, Muhammad united the tribes under the Medina Charter. After 8 years of enduring attacks by the Meccan tribes, Muhammad gathered 10,000 Muslims to lay siege to Mecca. The attack was met with little resistance and Muhammad managed to take the city with little bloodshed. He destroys idols. In 632, a few months after returning to Medina after undergoing Hajwada, Muhammad fell ill and eventually died. Muhammad left the Arabian Peninsula, which had united in a single Islamic government and had largely accepted Islam. Prophet Muhammad is the isim maf'ul form, adjective passive actor, of the word praise a lot, which is a form of affirmation of the three-letter root md whose opposite is reprove, so that Muhammad means the most praised. In addition, in one of the verses of the Quran, Muhammad is called by the name Ahmad, which in Arabic also means praiseworthy. Before the prophethood, Muhammad received 2 titles from the Quraysh tribe, the largest tribe in Mecca, which is also the tribe of Muhammad, namely Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy, and As-Sadiq, which means true. After his prophethood, his companions called him with the title Rasul Allah, then added the sentence Shalallahu alayhi wasallam, which means, may Allah grant him happiness and safety, often abbreviated as S.A.W. after his name. Muhammad also earned the nickname Abu al-Qasim, which means father of Qasim, because Muhammad once had a son named Qasim, but he died before reaching adulthood. Muhammad's genealogy from his parents goes back to Kilab bin Murrah bin Kabi bin Lu'ay bin Khalid bin Fir, Quraysh, bin Malik bin An-Nadr, Kays, bin Kanana bin Khuzaimah bin Madrika, Amir, bin Ilyas bin Mudhar bin Nizar bin Ma'ad bin Adnan. The genealogy until Adnan was agreed upon by the scholars, while after Adnan there was a difference of opinion. Adnan is generally believed to be a descendant of Ismail bin Ibrahim, who in turn was a descendant of Sam bin Noah. However, there are historians who compose even further genealogies. Muhammad bin Ishaq bin Yasar al-Madani, in one of his narrations, mentions genealogy up to Adam. The genealogy is Muhammad bin Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib bin Hazim bin Abdul Manaf bin Qushay bin Kilab bin Murrah bin Ka'b bin Lu'i bin Khalid bin Fir, Quraysh, bin Malik bin Nadir bin Kanana bin Khuzaimah bin Mudrika bin Ilyas bin Mudhar bin Nizar bin Ma'ad bin Adnan bin Yudad bin Al-Muqawam bin Nahar bin Tyra bin Yarub bin Yashjub bin Nabit bin Ismail bin Ibrahim bin Teri, Azar bin Nahar bin Sarud bin Arayu bin Phalik bin Abir bin Shalik bin Arfaxiad bin Sam, the son of Na, the son of Lamech, the son of Mutashalik, the son of Aknik, the son of Yarda, the son of Malal, the son of Chinan, the son of Yanish, the son of Sites, the son of Adam. The scholars and writers of the Sirah agree that Muhammad's birthday falls in the month of Rabiul Awwal. Muhammad was born in Mecca, the southern city of the Arabian Peninsula, around the year 570, close to the Year of the Elephant, which was the year of the failed attack on Mecca by the elephant forces under the leadership of Abraha. The most popular opinion refers to the 12th of Rabiul Awwal as the birthday of Muhammad. Based on the text of the Hadith, Muhammad called Monday as the day of his birth. The author of the Sirah Sulayman al-Mansur Furi and astronomer Mahmud Basia in their research tracked the Monday in question to coincide with the 9th of Rabiul Awwal. Muhammad came from one of the clans of the Quraysh tribe, the Bani Hashim, who inherited an honorable lineage in Mecca, although he was not respected because of his wealth. His father, Abdullah, died when Muhammad was still in the womb, 6 months before his birth. Urban tradition at that time to strengthen the physical and prevent children from urban diseases. He was raised and breastfed by Halima bint Abi Dwaib in the village of Bani Sa'd for 2 years. After that, little Muhammad was returned to be cared for by the slave Amaiman. At the age of 6, Muhammad lost his mother, Amina, to illness. For the next 2 years, Muhammad's needs were covered and provided for by his paternal grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib. When he was 8 years old, his grandfather died and Muhammad was later raised by his uncle Abu Talib, who appeared as a leader of the Bani Hashim after the death of Abdul Muttalib. When Muhammad reached his teenage years and developed into an adult, he began to study martial arts and archery, as well as knowledge to increase his skills in trading. Trading has become a common practice and is considered a stable source of income. Muhammad often accompanied his uncle on trade northward, and word of his honesty and trustworthiness spread quickly, making him widely trusted as an intermediary for the merchandise of the Meccans. One of the people who heard about the news of a young man who was honest and trustworthy in trading with was a widow named Khadijah. He was someone who had a high status among Arab tribes. As a trader, he also often sent merchandise to various remote areas in Arabia. Muhammad's reputation made Khadijah trust him to manage Khadijah's merchandise. Muhammad was promised by him to be paid double, and Khadijah was very impressed when Muhammad returned with more trading results than usual. Over time, Muhammad finally married Khadijah. They married when Muhammad was 25 years old. At that time, Khadijah was approaching the age of 40 years. The vast age difference and Khadijah's widow status did not become an obstacle for them, even though at that time the Quraysh had a culture that emphasized marriage with a girl rather than widows. Despite their growing wealth, Muhammad continued to live as a simple person. He preferred to use his wealth for more important things. When Muhammad was 35 years old, he joined the Quraysh in repairing the Kaaba. When the leaders of the Quraysh were arguing over who had the right to put the black stone, Muhammad was able to settle the matter and provide a fair solution. At that time he was known among the Arab tribes for his commendable qualities. His people loved him very much, until finally he obtained the title Al-Amin, which means, one who can be trusted. It is also narrated that Muhammad was a person who fully believed in the oneness of God. He lived in a very simple way and despised the greed, haughtiness, and pride common among the Arabs at that time. He was known to love the poor widows and orphans, and to share their suffering by trying to help them. He also avoided all the evils that had been entrenched among the Arabs at that time, such as gambling, drinking, abusive behavior, and others, so he was known as As-Siddiq, which means true. Muhammad was born in a backward society that enjoyed violence and fighting, and by the age of 40, he often retreated to Hira cave, a hill cave about 6 kilometers east of the city of Mecca, which was later known as Jabal an-Nur. He could spend days meditating, contemplating, and looking for calm, and his attitude was considered very contrary to Arab culture at that time, which liked to hang out in groups. From here, he often thought deeply, and asked Allah to destroy disbelief and ignorance. Muhammad was first appointed as an apostle on the night of 17 Ramadan/August 6, 611 AD. It is narrated that the angel Gabriel came and read the first surah of the Quran that was conveyed to Muhammad, namely Surah Al-Alaq. Muhammad was ordered to read the verse that had been given to him, but he evaded it by saying he could not read. Jibril repeated 3 times asking Muhammad to read, but the answer remained the same. Jibril said, 1. Read by saying, "The name of your Lord who created." 2. He has created man from a clot of blood. 3. Read, "And your Lord is exalted." 4. Who teaches humans with a pen. 5. He taught man what he did not know. Muhammad was 40 years 6 months and 8 days old when the first verse, as well as his appointment as an apostle, was conveyed to him according to the calculation of the lunar year, calendar based on the moon, or 39 years 3 months 8 days according to the calculation of the Shamsiya year, or the Christian year, calendar based on the sun. After the incident in Hira cave, Muhammad returned to his house. It is reported that he felt his body temperature alternately hot and cold due to the events that had just happened, and asked his wife to give him a blanket. It is also narrated that to calm her husband's heart, Khadija invited Muhammad to visit his cousin, who is also a Christian, namely Waraka bin Nawfal, a blind priest. Waraka knows a lot about prophecies about the last prophet from the Christian and Jewish holy books. Hearing Muhammad's story, Waraka said that he had been chosen by God to be a prophet. Then Waraka said that in Namus al-Akbar, angel Gabriel, had come to him, his people would say that he was an impostor, they would be hostile and fight him. When Waraka died, the word of God did not come to the Prophet Muhammad for some time, which made him so sad that he went to a high mountain and tried to commit suicide. But when he got to the top, before he could do so, the angel Gabriel came to convince him that he was truly the messenger of the divine. So he calmed down and gave up. And when the time interval for the revelation of the verse became longer, he again did the same thing. However, when he arrived at the top, the angel Gabriel came to assure him that he was the messenger of the divine. Muhammad received the verses of the Quran gradually over a period of 23 years. These verses were revealed based on factual events that were happening, so that almost every verse of the Quran was revealed accompanied by Asbabun Nuzul, the cause/event that underlies the revelation of the verse. The verses that have come down so far are collected as a compilation called Al-Ashaf, which is also called the Quran recitation. Some of the verses of the Quran have an izhar, clear, interpretation or understanding, especially verses regarding Islamic law, commercial law, marriage law, and the basic rules set by Islam in other aspects. while some of the other verses revealed to Muhammad are vague in meaning, in the sense that there needs to be a deeper interpretation and study to ascertain the meaning contained in them. In this case, most of Muhammad gave direct examples of the application of these verses in their daily social and religious interactions, so that his followers follow him as an example and standard in behaving and etiquette in social life. During the first 3 years since his appointment as an apostle, Muhammad only spread Islam to a limited extent among his close friends and relatives. This was to prevent an acute and massive reaction from among the Arabs at that time, who had been deeply assimilated by their culture with immoral acts, which in this context contradicts what Muhammad would bring and offer. Most of those who believed in Muhammad's teachings in the early days were members of his family and the general public who were close to him in everyday life, including Khadija, Ali, Zayd bin Haritha and Bilal. But in early 613, Muhammad publicly announced the religion of Islam. After a long time, many Arab national figures such as Abu Bakr, Uthman bin Affan, Zubair bin al-Awwam, Abdul Rahman bin Auf, Ubaidah bin Harith, Ammar bin Nufail later converted to the religion brought by Muhammad. All of the first followers of Islam were called as Sabiqun al-Awwalin, or the first spread of Islam. Around the year 613 AD, 3 years after Islam was spread secretly, Muhammad began to spread Islam openly to the people of Mecca. The response he received was very strong and massive. This is because the teachings of Islam brought by him contradicted what had become the culture and mindset of the people of Mecca at that time. The Meccan leader Abu Jahl declared that Muhammad was a madman who would destroy the life of the Meccans. As a result of the strong resistance that came from the ignorant society in Mecca and the power possessed by the leaders of the Quraysh who opposed him, Muhammad and many early Muslims were tortured, persecuted, humiliated, excluded, and excommunicated from the society of Mecca. Despite this treatment, he still gets a large number of followers. These followers then spread their teachings through trade to the land of Syria, Persia, and the Arabian Peninsula. After that, many curious and interested people came to Mecca and Medina to hear directly from Muhammad. His well-known good looks and personality made it easier for him to get a greater amount of sympathy and support. This became easier when Umar bin Khattab and a large number of other high-ranking Quraysh leaders decided to embrace Islam, although many also became antipathy considering that at that time tribal sentiment was very strong in Mecca and Medina. Muhammad also recorded many followers from the Farsi country, now Iran, one of which was recorded was Salman al-Farisi, a Persian scientist who later became Muhammad's friend. The torture experienced by almost all Muslims during this period prompted the idea to move, to Habsaya, now Ethiopia. The Negus or King Habsaya, a just Christian, allowed Muslims to emigrate to his country and protected them from the pressures of the rulers in Mecca. Muhammad himself, in the year 622 emigrated to Yathrib, a city about 200 miles, 320 kilometers, north of Mecca. Muhammad migrated to Medina. Arabs from various tribes every year come to Mecca for pilgrimage to the temple or Kaaba. They carry out various religious traditions during these visits. Muhammad saw this as an opportunity to spread the teachings of Islam. Among those who were interested in his teachings were a group of people from Yathrib. They met Muhammad and some people who had previously embraced Islam from Mecca in a place called Aqaba in secret. After embracing Islam, they then vowed to protect the followers of Islam and Muhammad from the cruelty of the people of Mecca. The following year, a group of Muslims from Yathrib came again to Mecca. They met Muhammad where they had met before. Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib, his uncle who was not yet a Muslim, was also present at the meeting. They invited Meccan Muslims to emigrate to Yathrib because the situation in Mecca was not conducive to the security of Muslims. Muhammad finally accepted the invitation and decided to emigrate to Yathrib in 622 AD, knowing that many Muslims intended to leave Mecca. The ignorant people of Mecca tried to prevent it. They assumed that if they were allowed to emigrate to Yathrib, Muhammad would have the opportunity to develop Islam in much wider areas. After about 2 months, he and the followers of Islam were involved in wars and a series of agreements. Finally, the Muslim community moved from Mecca to Yathrib, which then, after the arrival of the group from Mecca in 622, was known as Medina or Madinatun Nabi, city of the Prophet. In Medina, an Islamic government, caliphate, was established under the leadership of Muhammad. Muslims are free to worship, salat, and socialize in Medina, as are Christian and Jewish minorities. In the period after moving to Medina, Muhammad often received a series of attacks, terrors, death threats, and wars that he received from the rulers of Mecca, but all of them could be resolved more easily with the Muslims who were then united in Medina. In 629 AD, the 8th year after moving to Medina, Muhammad went back to Mecca with a Muslim army of 10,000 people. At that time he intended to conquer the city of Mecca and unite the residents of Mecca and Medina. The rulers of Mecca who did not have adequate defenses then agreed to hand over the city of Mecca without a fight, on the condition that the city of Mecca would be handed over the following year. Muhammad agreed, and when the following year when he returned, he had succeeded in uniting Mecca and Medina, and more broadly by that time he had succeeded in spreading Islam throughout the Arabian Peninsula. Muhammad led the Muslims on the pilgrimage, destroyed all the idols around the Kaaba, and then granted general amnesty and enforced Islamic regulations in the city of Mecca. The death of the Prophet Muhammad. In June 632 AD, he became ill while at Maimuna's house but then asked to move to Aisha's house. After previously experiencing a fever and fainting several times, he asked Abu Bakr to replace him leading the congregation. He finally died in Aisha's lap and his body was buried in his wife's house. Miracle. Prophetic. Like the previous prophets and apostles, Muhammad was given an irhasat, sign, of the coming of a prophet. As believed by Muslims, it has been narrated in several holy books of the heavenly religion. It is also narrated that there are signs in the womb, childhood and adolescence. Muhammad is believed to have been given miracles during his prophethood. Miracles of the Quran. Muslims believe that Muhammad's greatest miracle is the holy book of Muslims, namely the Quran. This is because at that time the Arab culture that was being developed was in the field of literature, especially language and poetry. It is said to be a miracle because the Quran is considered to have the highest order of Arabic literature delivered by an illiterate, and every miracle brought by the apostles always matches the trend of the current trend. Then the Quran also completely changed aspects of the life of the Arabs by bringing many harsh regulations to enforce the basic values of a new culture, which previously had very corrupt morals and behavior, such as worshipping idols, gambling, robbing, killing children out of fear of poverty and hunger, drinking alcohol, warring between tribes and so on. Isra and Miraj. Another miracle recorded and widely believed by Muslims is the splitting of the moon and the journey of Isra and Miraj from Medina to Jerusalem in a very short time. Another ability that Muhammad has is his intelligence and personality, which is widely praised and has become a role model for Muslims to this day. Muhammad's physical characteristics. Several hadiths narrate some of the physical characteristics that were narrated by the companions and their wives. Some narrations mention that Muhammad was of medium stature, reddish-white skin, thin beard, and was described as having a healthy and strong physique by those around him. Other narrations mention that Muhammad had black eyes, no mustache, medium beard, and a crooked nose which was in line with the anthropological characteristics of the Semites in general. Prophet Muhammad's marriage. During his lifetime Muhammad was married to 11 or 13 women. There are differences of opinion on this. At the age of 25 years he married Khadija, which lasted for 25 years until Khadija died. This marriage is described as very happy, so that when Khadija died, which coincided with the year of the death of her uncle Abu Talib, is called the year of sadness. After Khadija's death, Khawla bint Hakim advised him to marry Sauda bint Zama, a widow, or Asya, daughter of Abu Bakr. By Allah's command, Muhammad married both of them. Then Muhammad is recorded to have married several more women for a total of about 11 people, 9 of whom are still alive after Muhammad's death. Historians including Watt and Esposito argue that most marriages were intended to strengthen political ties, according to Arab culture, or provide a livelihood for widows. At that time widows were more difficult to marry because of the culture that emphasized marriage with virgins, differences with previous prophets and apostles. In carrying out their mission of dawah, Muslims believe, as stated in the Quran and Hadith, that Muhammad was sent by Allah to be a prophet for all mankind, while the previous prophets and apostles were only sent to their respective people, just like the prophet Moses who only sent for the children of Israel only. While the similarity of the teachings brought by Muhammad with the previous prophets and apostles is that they both teach the oneness of God, namely the testimony that the only God who has the right to be worshipped is Allah.
Well, that's a little story. Hopefully it will be a motivation, inspiration for all of us. Don't forget to watch the next story only on at @DHE_Ray. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.